time flies when you're having fun, but in my case it's more like time flies when you're working in a warehouse in the east of England. My adventure in this warehouse began about 4 years ago. Now, this warehouse is not some vintage piece of architecture. Far from it. It shot up from what was once farmland less than a decade ago. I did my due diligence, digging into its backstory and the land it sits on, hoping that might shed light on the unusual occurrences. As far as I've uncovered, there have been no accidents or unfortunate events during its construction or operation. The mostly single-story warehouse has a half-second story dedicated to offices at the front. So you might ask, what's so strange about this place? Let me tell you about some of the oddities I've encountered over the past 4 years. The first, and probably most common, is the sudden drop in temperature I occasionally experience. Imagine strolling through the open-plan warehouse when, bam, you feel like you just stepped into an icebox. This usually occurs in the core areas of the warehouse and isn't related to any windows or shutters. Plus, it's not just a cool breeze. We're talking about a significant temperature shift. Another intriguing experience is that prickling feeling of being watched. It's a bit unnerving, especially when the clock hits 5 p.m. and the place starts to empty out. But it's not just me. Several newbies clueless about the warehouse's history have reported the same goosebumps-inducing sensation as if someone invisible is keeping a close watch on their work. I was curious about my dad's experience at his job. He's the manager at a warehouse, a position he's held since the place opened. Part of his work routine involves checking the CCTV footage occasionally. He shared that sometimes he spots some intriguing, shadowy figures swiftly moving about in the recordings, mostly after the warehouse is closed for the night, typically after 2 a.m. Now, the security agency, which remotely monitors the place, didn't raise any alarms, so one can infer that there were no triggered sensors, hinting that no unauthorized individual had breached the facility. As I mentioned earlier, an external firm keeps an eye on the warehouse after closure. 2 types of sensors are installed. One on the outside doors to detect if they're opened, and another on the inner doors to do the same. If any sensors are activated, the security company calls upon a couple of employees from a predefined list who live locally to investigate. On days these employees are rostered for callouts, they are advised against consuming alcohol. So, one spring evening, around 5 years ago, my dad can't recall if it was in April or May, the internal alarm was set off, and 2 colleagues were notified. After ensuring that all external doors, windows, and delivery shutters were securely locked with no signs of break-ins, they decided to explore within, hoping to find out what led to what seemed like a false alarm. They found the offices to be in order, including all the internal doors. Next, they ventured into the heart of the building, the warehouse. All is not as it seems, as the old saying goes. Let me tell you an intriguing story about 2 gentlemen. One beautiful evening, as they stepped into a building, the soft melody of a 40s or 50s style song charmed their ears. It seemed to be a woman's voice, yet they couldn't see anyone around. After asking several times for the seemingly invisible singer to introduce herself, they got no response. But the plot thickens. Venturing further, our 2 friends advanced towards the east side of the building, chasing the echoes of the nostalgic tunes. As they inched closer to what they thought was the source, like a whisper in the wind, the sound grew faint and ultimately fell silent. Curiosity morphing into concern, they rang up the security company, checking on the recorded footage of the building's premises and main entrance. Much to their surprise, no trace was found of anyone going in or out since they set foot inside, and the eastern side was completely unoccupied. Now, just to clarify, I'm personally acquainted with both of these gentlemen. Neither one smokes or indulges in drugs. They also claimed no alcohol was consumed that night, as they were on duty. One of them doesn't drink at all, as a matter of fact. What's more, they are both rock-solid, dependable folks, who, until this eerie incident, were quite skeptical about the existence of ghosts. Dig a little deeper, and you'll find some interesting background about the area encompassing the warehouse. Before the building's construction, a mandatory archaeological survey revealed traces of a post-Roman settlement, a hint of an Anglo-Saxon presence, and whispers of an ancient burial ground. However, due to the acidic soil conditions, substantial evidence could not be gathered to firmly establish the existence of the burial site. My investigation also unearthed a historical fact. From 1943 to 1947, a detention center for German and Italian prisoners of war was located just a stone's throw west of the building. Although no documented evidence exists of any deaths occurring at the detention center, it does make one wonder if some restless spirits are lingering in the vicinity. The warehouse also sits on an underground river, which has been known to flood during heavy rains. Could this flowing water be a conduit for otherworldly energy? Or perhaps the warehouse was built upon ancient ley lines, resulting in paranormal activity? These are all just theories and speculations, but one thing is for sure: something strange is happening at this warehouse. Imagine yourself securely bound to a chair in a large, dimly lit room with the distant sound of a forklift humming in the background. Hello? Is anyone there? No reply. Just the faint echoes of laughter sending chills down your spine. Something's not right, you think. And the only logical move is to make a swift exit from this ominous place. And then, like a miracle, the ropes securing you to the chair give way, setting you free. Heart pounding, adrenaline surging, you dart through the vast structure, fervently seeking an exit. A door appears, bringing a glimmer of hope, but as you throw it open, you face a figure wearing a sinister Jason mask. "Who are you?" you stammer, but he doesn't answer, his heavy breathing the only response. Suddenly, he raises a threatening machete, making your heart skip several beats. With quick reflexes, you dodge his attack and make a dash for it, the terror escalating with each passing second. Finding refuge in a nearby supply closet, you discover a trap door leading upwards. The latter tests your physical resolve, but you persist, climbing into darkness, only interrupted by faint lights embedded in the walls. And then, you are there at the top. You open the door and scan the dimly lit room, only to spot a familiar object, the same chair you were previously bound to. A sinking feeling accompanies the realization of your predicament. Your desperate attempt to leave leads you to a door, only to be met by not one but two intimidating figures in Jason masks. "What do you want?" you plead, but time isn't on your side to await their response. Astonishingly, their limbs appear to dislocate, falling off as if made of plastic. As they crumble to the floor, you finally comprehend your surroundings. You're ensnared in a warehouse brimming with mechanized horror figures. Emerging from the shadows is the sound of the forklift, guided by a man concealed behind a chilling clown mask. "What's happening?" you ask. But instead of a response, he triggers the arrival of two more animated figures. Strangely, they seem familiar, horror characters from famous movies. Suddenly, the lights completely black out, and a terrifying chase ensues. Exhaustion is taking its toll on you, but there's no stopping. You sprint towards the door, but it's locked. A wave of relief washes over you as you spot a large red button. An emergency exit, perhaps? You push it. Success! The warehouse door swings open, revealing a path to freedom. As you escape the warehouse's confines, you find yourself in a nearby forest, accompanied only by the sound of your pounding heart, pattering rain, and the echo of sinister laughter from behind. Your limbs tire as you sprint further into the dense wilderness, but you persist, fueled by fear and the will to survive. Suddenly, you see an old abandoned mine shaft, the perfect hiding spot. As you crouch in the darkness, the sound of the approaching forklift grows louder. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You remain still, trying to blend in. But it's too late. The clown-masked man is closing in. Desperate, you try to make a run for it, only to find yourself immobilized. And then it hits you. Your limbs are rusted like the animatronics, and escape is no longer possible. Trapped, you realize your fate is sealed like the other mechanical figures. The warehouse was your home, and you are just another animatronic. As darkness slowly engulfs you, the last thing you see is the man reaching out to grab you, his laughter echoing in your ears. "Looks like I'll have to reset your mind again," he says. And then, oblivion. The old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town had always been rumored to be haunted. No one knew for sure why or how, but the stories were enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. As a group of daring teenagers, we couldn't resist exploring the warehouse and seeing if the rumors were true. We waited until midnight and armed ourselves with flashlights, snacks, and a lot of courage. We snuck into the warehouse through a broken window and immediately felt an eerie presence. Despite it being a warm summer night, the air was cold and musty. As we made our way deeper into the warehouse, we heard strange noises and saw shadows moving in the corners of our eyes. But the scariest part came when we reached the top floor. In one of the rooms, we found a wall covered in strange symbols and markings. We stared at it in confusion and heard a loud bang behind us. When we turned around, there was nothing there but a gust of wind blowing through an open window. We ran out of the warehouse as fast as we could, convinced that something supernatural had been watching us. From that day on, none of us dared to go near that warehouse again. The mystery surrounding the abandoned warehouse only grew with each passing day. People started reporting strange sightings and unexplainable events occurring near the warehouse. Some even claimed to have seen ghosts wandering around the building at night. It wasn't until years later that we found out the truth behind the haunting. It turned out that a group of workers had died in a tragic accident while working in the warehouse many years ago. Their spirits were said to still roam around, unable to rest peacefully. To this day, the old abandoned warehouse remains a popular spot for ghost hunters and thrill seekers, but no one ever stays there for long. The eerie presence and strange occurrences continue to haunt anyone who dares to enter its doors. I'm a skeptic about ghosts and haunted places, but what happened at the old warehouse last summer changed my beliefs forever. I was hired as a security guard for the warehouse, which had recently been bought by a new owner. On my first night, everything seemed normal as I made my rounds and checked all the doors and windows were locked. But as soon as midnight hit, strange things began to happen. Doors that I had locked suddenly swung open on their own. Objects moved without explanation, and I heard whispers coming from empty rooms. At first, I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks on me or just an overactive imagination. That is until I saw a white woman floating down the hallway. I froze in fear, unable to move or speak. She stopped and stared at me with sadness before disappearing into thin air. After that night, I couldn't bring myself to go back to work at the warehouse. But curiosity got the best of me, and I started researching its history. It turned out that a woman had died tragically inside the warehouse decades ago, and her spirit still roamed around, searching for peace. I never thought I would believe in ghosts until experiencing it firsthand at the haunted warehouse. From then on, I warned anyone who dared to enter its doors about the restless spirits lurking within. The old abandoned warehouse may just seem like a scary place, but it holds the stories of those who died tragically, and their spirits still linger on. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it's hard to deny the chilling feeling you get when entering that haunted building. In 2019, my wife and I were on a road trip when we stumbled upon an old warehouse in the middle of nowhere. Curious, we decided to explore it and take some pictures. My wife, who is a professional photographer, was particularly intrigued by the building's eerie atmosphere and unique architecture. As she snapped away with her camera, I explored the warehouse on my own. That's when I heard faint music coming from one of the rooms. I followed the sound and found a room filled with old instruments and what seemed to be a stage set up. But as soon as I stepped onto the stage, the music stopped abruptly and all the instruments fell silent. Suddenly, there was a loud crash behind me, and I turned around to see all the instruments flying off their stands. I ran back to my wife in a panic, and we left the warehouse as fast as possible. Looking back at the pictures, we noticed strange orbs and figures in some of the photos. We couldn't explain it, but we were convinced that it was a haunted warehouse. When we got back home, the first thing we did was research the warehouse's history, but nothing came up. It was as if the warehouse had been erased from existence. We still can't explain what happened at that old warehouse, but we'll never forget the strange encounter we had there. These were just a few of the countless stories about haunted warehouses. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, these abandoned buildings hold a certain mystery and energy. If you have experienced any similar encounters, feel free to share them in the comments below. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more true horror stories.